founder of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange. Julian Assange is finally a free man, if you can even believe that. So everybody, I'm sure, has already seen the news, but kind of a quick little rundown. Apparently, they stamped out some kind of a plea deal where he's going to plead guilty to, I don't know what he's pleading guilty to exactly. It's something under the Espionage Act. But then they decided that, oh, well, since we've been torturing you in solitary for years, we'll just call it time served.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like look, we already did the punishment without you actually facing any crime. So we'll just call it time served. And so, everybody's seen the little video there of him like leaving the facility and getting in the van and signing the paperwork and all that stuff. And yeah, go ahead, Dave. Jesus Christ, feel free. How many signals do I have to freaking give you?
That last one was pretty clear.
And you didn't do it anyway. You just didn't do it anyway. Right there. So you see him right there. I'm glad to see that he looks all right, because that for a long time there was a lot of concerns that just the toll that it takes on you physically and mentally being in the position that he was in. That I couldn't even imagine. But he seems to be all right. I can't imagine how he's feeling right now. But I want to kind of address some of the things around it, and then kind of just ultimately my takeaway on it. I hate to get political on the show here, but we'll do our best, do some channeling of the old gold standard here. So first things first, a lot of people have pointed out that this whole thing was orchestrated, or at least the presumption is that the Biden administration is orchestrating ultimately his release, and then he hasn't been pardoned. He did technically have to plead guilty. He went to Saipan, of all places, because he didn't want to have to go to the United States, so they had him go to a U.S. territory nearby where he could, go before a judge and have the hearing and all that stuff. And so they've already done all that, and he's already back in Australia. But the thing is that a lot of people have said is that, well, look, the Biden administration, it's an election year, and they're looking at the polls and they're thinking, we might be losing to Orange Man, and so let's just do something to kind of win us some independents and libertarian voters. Let's orchestrate the release of Julian Assange. And when a lot of people say that, they say it with just this girth of cynicism of that's the only reason that they did it, that he should have never been imprisoned in the first place. He should have been a free man. Nothing he did was a crime. And the only reason that they're releasing him is to, score political points, and I guess my point is that if the only reason that this is happening is for political gamesmanship between Biden and Trump, then okay, that's
Whatever
what they do. Yeah. God forbid that the pressure that they feel to one up each other for votes leads to a better world, right? Just take the W, for God's sakes. You know what I'm saying? I know that there's going to be people out there look, if you're standing on principles in the Constitution, you're going to be waiting out in the rain for a long time. We live in a transactional political world where it's you vote for me and I give you X. Well, you vote for me and I give you Y, and whoever puts together the best resume wins. That's the system as it exists. And so if they're actually offering you something good along with your child abuse, just take the something good. Don't be that person who says, oh no, just child abuse for me, thanks. Don't.
I'm principled.
Yeah, I'm principled. Don't be that guy. And that I can't help but to point out that you don't see a lot. By the way, you don't see a lot of famous celebrities saying, oh, thank God Assange is released, because they never gave a shit. But there was one person I did see posting very negatively that, oh, Assange is a criminal and the information he released called soldiers to die. And that was Mike Pence Former Vice President Mike Pence under Trump. And don't you worry, he got ratioed to oblivion on Twitter for daring. Like, everyone was like, aren't you dead? Like, why are you talking? Somebody, my favorite comment that had somebody's comment that was only a few words had many thousands more likes than actual Mike Pence's tweet, which just said, nice. Your political career is over. Eat shit, LOL. But to that point, the reason I wanted to bring that up is that the only argument really there has ever been against Assange in the leaks that were orchestrated with WikiLeaks was that, well, he released classified information that put lives in danger. That there were actual U.S. servicemen who then were outed and soldiers were put in danger or killed because classified information was leaked and then it got to enemy hands before people could be recalled from the field or whatever. So it actually, I know you're going to be shocked. I'm glad you're sitting down, Dave. It turns out that's not true.
What?
Yeah, I know. So
they're lying?
When Assange actually went before a judge, because there is the FedGov representatives there because they're a part of the plea deal, the judge says that he's actually looking at the documents and says that, well, ultimately, I'm willing to sign off on time served. And one of the reasons I'm willing to sign off on this, the judge speaking, is that the prosecution, the state, has said that there was no actual identified physical injury. There was no victim. And so since no physical injuries could be identified, that's the same thing as saying all of that stuff about soldiers having been killed. That was verifiably false. But think about that for a second. Think about the implications of this. It was the state that entered those documents saying, no, we're okay with the plea deal because, nobody got hurt, which means they always knew that the leaks didn't cause anyone to get hurt, but they let that lie linger in the wind for years. Yeah. They let people like Mike Pence, even this very week, go out and tweet that lie when state officials knew it was a lie all along. Because that's how they operate. They always knew it was wrong. And so I want to kind of wrap this up with just kind of a few personal points on this. Is that you'll see a lot of other people that'll say, that they're displeased that he pled out, right? Like he didn't, he wasn't truly exonerated. They didn't really drop the charges. He pled guilty to things, and I understand that potentially sets a terrible precedent and that they could go after journalists in the future using the same means. Look, I get all that. And should he be actually pardoned after the fact so that it's completely stricken from the record? Of course, I agree with that. Yes. Of course. But there are still people who feel like somehow he sold out because he pled guilty rather than standing firm and saying, no, I'm willing to have my day in court. I didn't do anything wrong. All I have to say to those people is, you know what? You are more than welcome to take his place in jail.
Oh, yeah. Looks fun.
It's so easy to be a champion for liberty from your couch, wanting other people to die for your beliefies. It reminded me of Irwin Schiff, Peter Schiff's dad. A lot of people know Peter Schiff, but they may not remember Irwin Schiff. Of course, Peter Schiff is kind of crazy and retarded, and that's okay. We like Peter anyway. But his father, Irwin, was the one who actually died in custody for tax-related charges because he said taxation is theft, come and get me. And you know what? They did.
He meant it.
Died in prison, and he meant it. And by the way, I don't think that's a good idea. I think you are a lot more valuable to the world being in the arms of your loved ones and making positive good in the world with what liberty you do have, rather than dying on a cross. That's just me. But it doesn't matter. He did it. So all I'm saying is that unless you're that guy, you don't get to judge other people for how they fight their battles. Is that fair?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And so I really wanted to do this off the cuff as opposed to like reading a script or having a bunch of imagery or stuff. Um, because I wanted it to really be genuine. But I feel like at the end of the day, I think my biggest takeaway from all of it is just sadness. It was 2013 that he really first got into some of the deep waters. Um, and then it was 2018, I think, that he essentially was in prison, that they drug him out and threw him in Belmarsh and all that stuff. I remember
Mhm.
being on the Gold Standard talking about it. Remember that show? I remember
Oh
being
yeah.
like in the first or second year of the Gold Standard saying, "Oh, hey, Blake, we have breaking news. They're dragging Julian Assange out of the embassy. He's going to prison." And I remember thinking then, "Oh, dude, we're never going to see this guy again. They're throwing him in the
Yeah.
hole, and he's done." And they did throw him in the hole,
Hmm.
but he got out. But man, that was even the point in which, if you only count it from the point in which he left the embassy, which that's still not fair. When he was locked up in the
Yeah.
embassy, that was already bad. He was already
Mhm.
essentially sequestered from the world. But if you're only counting the what was it, like 6 years that he was in Belmarsh just for them to ultimately let him go home after all of that time, um, it's like imagine yourself in that situation. Like, could you imagine being away from your family for 6 years, basically? Like, on a technicality, you're just waiting out the timer. It you know
Yeah, I
it
don't like that.
reminded me. It reminded me of stories of people being falsely imprisoned. You see those sometimes where,
Oh yeah.
somebody will be in jail for years or even decades, and then finally they're exonerated with DNA evidence or,
Yeah.
whatever. And it's just like, you think that the whole world has moved on without you, like you were just in stasis for that time, but the rest of the world
Mhm.
wasn't. And you think like if you had kids, your kids grew up. If you had elderly parents, your parents passed away, all that happening while you were gone. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine
No,
going away and then coming back and like all your kids being adults? And
I don't. I
well,
don't like
and
that.
it's something that you can never have that back, you know?
Hmm.
Like that's gone. Nothing else for that happens from that point forward can possibly replace what they took from you. I know that a lot of people in that position, because you see these stories too, where people finally get out, and so many of them are just so thankful to breathe free air again, that their
Yeah.
biggest emotion is just joy, you know, just joy, relief, I don't know Julian Assange, besides watching prepared statements and recorded interviews, but that's not knowing someone. I don't know Julian Assange. Maybe he is the kind of person who feels nothing but gratitude, and that would be wonderful if he is. But I just can't help but think as I sit here talking to you now that if it were me, I would just be so consumed with hatred that it would
No.
be like I died in there.
Yeah.
And then it would end up being a situation where that would be a prophecy that would prove self-fulfilling.